God sees beyond what we can, and no one can hide their true self from Him. While people may appear admirable, loving, or trustworthy, God is never fooled. He looks past appearances and goes straight to the heart. As humans, we are often impressed by charisma, influenced by words, or swayed by emotions. But when you walk with God, He gives you the ability to see what's hidden. His wisdom and understanding go beyond human limitations, revealing motivations and intentions that may take us years to figure out. When God starts revealing lies in someone's life, it's not a coincidence, it's to keep you aligned with His purpose. Even if someone's actions seem harmless, trust that God knows what's really inside their heart. When God shows someone's true face, it's not to shame or hurt them, but to teach, guide, and protect His children. Remember, God's vision is perfect. He knows the future from the past. If you've ever wondered why someone changes when their true nature is exposed, it's because the God of truth can't let lies last. Trust that He will reveal the hidden things so you can walk in freedom, wisdom, and victory. Discernment is a tool that helps us navigate life's hidden agendas. It's not just a gift, but a lifeline in a world full of deceit and manipulation. God equips His children to discern between what's real and what's fake, but it requires a deep connection with Him to sharpen that gift. Discernment isn't about suspicion or judgment. It's like a spiritual radar, helping you sense things that words or actions can't show. Sometimes you can't explain why, but your spirit feels uneasy around certain people or situations. That's God guiding you. Hidden agendas aren't always easy to spot. The enemy often pretends to be good, and people with bad intentions disguise themselves with charm and kindness. Without discernment, you might fall into traps that derail your purpose. But when you walk closely with God, He gives you insights that go beyond what you can see. You'll start noticing patterns, inconsistencies, and when someone's actions don't match their words. Discernment protects you from wrong relationships or poor decisions. It helps you see beyond appearances and into someone's soul. Have you ever wondered why God gave Solomon wisdom? It wasn't just for leadership, but to understand human behavior and make wise judgments. That same wisdom is available to you today if you ask for it. When discernment is working, you can face challenges with confidence, even when others try to deceive or mislead you. Their schemes will be exposed in God's truth. Discernment not only protects you, but it positions you to walk in line with God's will, make wise choices, and stay strong when others fall into traps. Ask God to sharpen your discernment so you can live with clarity, confidence, and purpose. In His light, no agenda remains hidden, and no scheme can succeed. God removes masks to protect His children from deception. People often wear masks to hide who they really are out of fear, pride, or control, showing one face to the world while keeping their true intentions hidden. These masks are often used to manipulate or avoid consequences, but God won't let His children be led astray by these facades. When He sees a mask leading you off His path, He will remove it, sometimes in painful ways, but always for your protection. Recognize that God doesn't expose someone's true nature to embarrass them. He does it out of love, so you stay aligned with His plan. When He removes a mask, it's not just about showing you the truth about others, it's about showing you something about yourself. It's a wake-up call that invites you to trust God more than your own judgment. Sometimes we want to hold on to relationships we think are good for us, but God knows when someone's mask hides jealousy, deceit, or manipulation. In His mercy, He will reveal the truth to spare you from unnecessary pain. This revelation may come through an event, a conversation, or a series of circumstances, but when God exposes the truth, it's an act of protection. Trust that His timing in removing these masks is perfect. Sometimes it may hurt or confuse you when someone's true nature is revealed, but remember that God isn't exposing them to harm you, He's doing it to deliver you. It's a form of divine intervention, showing you who's truly for you and who's not. It frees you from deception and gives you the clarity to move forward with peace. When we see others for who they truly are, we're reminded of the importance of being genuine ourselves. God wants us to walk in truth, not in pretense. He calls us to shed our own masks and be real with ourselves, others, and Him. When we live authentically, we don't need to fear exposure because our hearts are already aligned with God's truth. And when someone else's mask is removed, we can stand firm, knowing God is doing it for our protection and growth. The exposure of someone's true nature is part of God's plan for our growth. It may be difficult to understand why certain relationships or situations reveal their true nature at certain times, but there is purpose in it. God uses every circumstance, whether painful or not, to help us grow spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. The exposure of hidden motives and deceitful behaviors is a divine tool to shape and refine us. When we experience these revelations, we can choose to see them as setbacks or recognize them as God's way of making us stronger. One of the greatest lessons we learn is to trust God's process. The truth may not always come at the time we expect, but it always comes when God knows we're ready. These moments often force us to reevaluate our relationships, choices, and sense of self-worth. God uses these exposures not only to protect us, but to prepare us for what's ahead. These revelations serve as stepping stones in our spiritual journey, challenging us to grow in wisdom, discernment, and faith. Sometimes God exposes the truth to shift our focus from the wrong sources of validation to the right one. Perhaps we've placed our trust in the wrong people, or we've relied too much on a relationship that wasn't meant to last. God loves us too much to let us stay in toxic situations. That's why He reveals the truth, redirecting us toward what truly matters, His will for our lives. These exposures aren't just about uncovering the truth about others, they are also opportunities for self-reflection. God uses these moments to help us guard our hearts, walk in wisdom, and rely more on Him. When someone betrays us, it may expose a weakness in our ability to trust or discern people's intentions. God allows us to learn from these experiences so we can grow stronger and more vigilant in the future. Betrayal and disappointment are painful, but they serve a purpose in God's plan, helping us grow, reveal hidden intentions, and draw us closer to His purpose. When we face these trials, we must trust that God is using them to refine us and prepare us for what's next. Sometimes these revelations show us that we need to shift our priorities and let go of unhealthy relationships or situations. It forces us to face reality and make decisions that align with God's plan for us. As we continue to walk with God, we begin to recognize the subtle but powerful ways He communicates with us. It's not always through loud voices or miraculous signs, but rather through the quiet stirring of our heart. He speaks in moments of stillness and silence, giving us the discernment to navigate the complexities of life with a calm assurance. God's communication isn't just in the big decisions we face, but in the small choices that shape our daily life. The more we tune into His voice, the clearer it becomes, and the more confidently we are able to move through life's challenges. It's in these moments of stillness that we can hear His gentle whisper, directing us toward what is best for us, even when we don't fully understand why something is happening or why we're being led in a certain direction. With God's guidance, we begin to see the world through His lens, understanding the deeper meanings behind the people we encounter and the situations we face. What once seemed like mere coincidences begin to appear as divine interventions, and we recognize the fingerprints of God in the small details of our lives. Our ability to discern what is true and false grows stronger, not because of our own wisdom, but because we're relying on God's wisdom to guide us. It becomes evident that the more we seek His truth, the clearer everything else becomes. We start recognizing when things aren't right or when something is out of alignment with His will. It becomes easier to trust our instincts, knowing that God has given us the ability to sense the truth beneath the surface. We no longer have to rely on appearances or what others say. We trust in what God reveals to us. Walking in this level of discernment allows us to make better decisions, especially when faced with difficult or uncertain circumstances. It gives us the confidence to stand firm in the face of adversity, knowing that God is with us even when the road ahead seems unclear. Discernment isn't about knowing everything, but about trusting that God will guide us through every situation, big or small. Even when things don't seem to make sense, we trust that His plan is unfolding in ways we might not yet see. With this kind of spiritual clarity, we become better at understanding the intentions of others. We start to recognize when people are being authentic and when they are putting on a mask to hide their true motives. This gift of discernment helps us guard our hearts and keep ourselves aligned with God's purpose for our lives, allowing us to avoid the traps set by the enemy and the distractions that would lead us astray. As we move through life, we'll face moments of doubt and confusion, but it's in these moments that our faith in God's timing is refined. We may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but when we trust in God's perfect timing, we can be sure that His plan is being worked out for our good. We might find ourselves in situations where we feel lost, unsure of where to go next. But even in those moments, we can rest in the knowledge that God is always leading us, always guiding us toward His purpose. And while it might feel like we're in the dark, God is never far away. His presence surrounds us, and His light shines through even the darkest of times, showing us the way when we can't see it ourselves. This deeper understanding of God's timing leads us to a place of peace. We no longer rush through life, or try to force things to happen according to our own schedule. We trust that God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't make sense to us in the moment. Whether it's a relationship that falls apart, a job opportunity that doesn't come through, or a dream that seems to be slipping further away, we trust that God's plan is better than anything we could have imagined. And when God's timing is revealed, we understand that He was protecting us all along, even when it felt like we were being led through hardship. Every closed door, every missed opportunity, every moment of rejection is simply a redirection towards something great. Our experiences of exposure and revelation are not meant to break us, but to build us. The truth that God reveals may be painful, but it is also necessary for our growth. Each layer that is peeled back, each mask that is removed, is an opportunity for us to become more like Christ. Through these moments of truth, God is refining our character, teaching us to walk in love, patience, and grace. He is preparing us for the next season of our lives, equipping us with the wisdom and discernment we need to navigate future challenges. And while the process may feel difficult, we can trust that it is shaping us into the people He has called us to be. God's timing in revealing the truth is always perfect. It may not come when we want it to, or how we expect it, but it always comes at the right moment. When we trust in His timing, we can move forward with peace, knowing that He is in control of every aspect of our lives. His plan is unfolding, even when we don't understand it, and He is working all things together for our good. This kind of trust frees us from the burden of trying to control everything ourselves. It allows us to rest in God's sovereignty, knowing that He sees the bigger picture and is leading us exactly where we need to go. As we continue to grow in discernment, we become more attuned to the ways God is working in our lives. We begin to see patterns and connections that we might have missed before. What once seemed like random events or unimportant details now appear to be part of God's grand design. We realize that He has been guiding us all along, even in the moments when we felt lost or uncertain. And as we look back on our lives, we can see how every trial, every hardship, and every moment of exposure has played a role in shaping us into the person we are today. With this understanding, we are able to face future challenges with confidence. We know that God is always with us, guiding us through every situation. We no longer fear exposure because we know that God uses it to refine us and bring us closer to His will. Exposure is not something to dread, but something to embrace. It is a part of God's process to make us more like Him, to teach us to rely on His wisdom, and to help us walk in truth. Every time the truth is revealed, whether about others or ourselves, it is an opportunity for growth, healing, and transformation. We must also remember that exposure is not just about the revelation of others' true nature, it is also about our own. It forces us to confront our own weaknesses and blind spots, to acknowledge the areas of our lives that need God's grace and healing. And in those moments, we have the opportunity to grow spiritually and emotionally, to learn from our mistakes, and to become more discerning in the future. We learn to rely on God's wisdom, to trust in His timing, and to walk in His truth. The journey of exposure is a refining process that draws us closer to God. It teaches us to trust in His perfect plan for our lives, to rely on His wisdom, and to embrace the truth, even when it is difficult. Through this process, we are transformed, becoming more like Christ, and more aligned with God's will for our lives. Exposure, though painful at times, is a necessary part of our spiritual journey. It shapes us, refines us, and prepares us for the future that God has planned for. So as we face the truth, whether it's about others or ourselves, let us embrace it with open hearts, trusting that God is using it to make us stronger, wiser, and more like Him. As we journey further in our walk with God, the process of transformation becomes even more evident. The experiences we face, both joyful and painful, are not just events that occur by chance, but are carefully woven into the fabric of our lives by God's hand. Every trial, every moment of suffering, and every moment of joy has a purpose that God is using to shape us into who He designed us to. With each new challenge, God gives us an opportunity to trust Him more deeply and to depend on His strength rather than our own. It's easy to rely on our own understanding, but it is in these moments of uncertainty that we learn the most about God's faithfulness and love. His faithfulness is constant, even when the world around us seems uncertain and chaotic. What once felt like stumbling blocks become stepping stones in our journey toward becoming more like Christ. We begin to realize that nothing in our lives is wasted when we surrender it to God. Every single moment, every person we encounter, every experience, is part of God's greater plan for our lives. Even if we can't see it at the time, the more we lean into His guidance, the more we begin to trust in His perfect timing, even when things don't make sense to us. There are times when it feels like we're walking through the unknown, unsure of what the next step is, but in those moments God is there, leading us, even when we can't see the way forward. It's in those moments that we are forced to surrender our own agendas, plans, and timelines, and allow God to take the lead. When we let go of control, that's when we begin to experience true peace. We start to understand that the road we walk isn't just about the destination, but about the journey itself. Through this journey, God is refining us, testing our hearts, and preparing us for the next season of our lives. Each season of our life serves a purpose. God uses the highs and lows, the mountaintops and valleys, to teach us something important about who we are and who He is. The deeper we grow in our relationship with God, the more we begin to see the beauty in the struggle. We learn to look at life through a different lens, one that sees every moment as an opportunity for growth. Even in the midst of challenges, we begin to see God's hand at work, molding us and shaping us into the people we were always meant to be. This deeper understanding of God's work in our lives also helps us extend grace to others. We begin to recognize that others, too, are on their own journeys of growth. And just as God is refining us, He is refining them. We learn to see people not just as they are in the moment, but as the person God is shaping them to be. We no longer judge people based on their mistakes or shortcomings, but we see them as God sees them through the lens of grace and love. This transformation in how we view others doesn't mean we ignore the truth about people or their actions. Rather, it helps us to respond with compassion and understanding. Even when we are hurt, God calls us to love others as He loves us. And part of that love involves showing mercy and grace, just as He has shown mercy and grace to us. As we grow in this understanding, we begin to approach relationships differently. Instead of focusing on what others can do for us, we begin to focus on how we can serve others and love them in a way that reflects Christ's love. We start to see our relationships as opportunities to be a reflection of God's love, grace, and truth in the world. This shift in perspective also changes how we handle disappointment and betrayal. Instead of reacting with anger, bitterness, or resentment, we learn to let go of our desire for justice and trust that God will take care of it in His time. It doesn't mean we're passive or that we ignore injustice, but it means that we release the need for retribution and trust that God is in control. As we mature in our faith, we start to see that our purpose is not about seeking revenge or settling scores, but about aligning our hearts with God's will and trusting in His timing. We come to realize that there is more to life than our immediate circumstances. What may seem like a setback is often a divine setup for something greater. God uses our experiences to position us for His greater purposes. Our challenges become opportunities to grow in wisdom, strength, and faith, allowing us to walk through life with confidence, knowing that God is guiding our every step. When we begin to live in this deeper awareness of God's presence in our lives, we find that our hearts are more at peace. We stop striving to make things happen on our own, and we begin to let go of our worries and anxieties. Trusting in God's timing frees us from the burden of trying to control everything, and we begin to experience a deeper sense of peace that surpasses all understanding. It's in those quiet moments when we fully surrender to God that we experience His peace. But this peace isn't just about feeling calm in our hearts. It's a peace that empowers us to keep moving forward, no matter what challenges lie ahead. We become confident in the knowledge that God is with us every step of the way. This peace is a result of trusting in God's sovereignty, His ability to see the bigger picture and work everything together for our good. As we continue to grow in this trust, we begin to see how God has been working behind the scenes all along. We look back on our lives and realize that even in the hardest moments, God was there, refining us, teaching us, and positioning us for the future He has for us. And as we look ahead, we can trust that the same God who has been faithful in the past will continue to be faithful in the future. His plan for us is unfolding perfectly, and we can rest in the assurance that He is always with us, guiding us every step of the way. It's through this process of growth, refinement, and surrender that we become the people God has created us to be. We are no longer defined by our past mistakes, our failures, or the things we've suffered. We are defined by God's love and His purpose for our lives. When we fully embrace this truth, we begin to live with a sense of freedom and confidence that only comes from knowing we are walking in alignment with God's will. This freedom isn't about living without challenges or struggles. It's about knowing that we are not alone in those struggles. God is with us, and He will never leave us or forsake us. As we continue to walk with Him, we can be assured that He will guide us, protect us, and use every moment of our lives for His glory. And in that assurance, we can find peace, even in the midst of the storm. We know that our lives are in His hands, and no matter what happens, we are exactly where He wants us to be. With every step we take in faith, we grow closer to the person God has designed us to be. We become more aligned with His purpose, more compassionate toward others, and more able to reflect His love and grace in the world around us. We no longer strive for our own plans, but surrender to God's perfect timing and His greater purpose. And as we do, we are transformed, day by day, into the image of Christ, reflecting His love, grace, and truth to a world in need. This transformation isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. As we continue to trust in God's timing and surrender our will to His, we experience a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and fulfillment than we could ever imagine. Our lives become a testimony to His faithfulness, His goodness, and His love, and we are able to walk through this world with confidence, knowing that we are exactly where He wants us to be. As we continue to walk in God's grace, we begin to understand the deeper meaning behind the challenges we face. Life is not a series of random events, but a divine narrative that unfolds according to God's perfect plan. Every step we take, every decision we make, every moment we experience is part of God's greater purpose for our lives. We begin to realize that God is not just present in the big milestones, but in the seemingly small, everyday moment. He is there in the quiet whispers of our hearts, guiding us, teaching us, and shaping us. In those moments when we feel uncertain, we can trust that He is holding our hand, leading us toward a future that is beyond what we could ever imagine. It is in these moments that we discover a deeper trust in God's sovereignty, knowing that everything He allows in our lives is for a greater purpose. We stop viewing our struggles as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. It is through the fire of adversity that we are refined, just as gold is purified through heat. These trials are not meant to break us, but to build us, to refine us, to prepare us for the purpose God has set before us. And as we go through these trials, we learn to rely not on our own strength, but on the strength that God provides. We learn to lean into Him more fully, trusting that He is sufficient for every need, for every challenge. We also begin to realize that the process of transformation it's not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey of becoming more like Christ. Each day, each decision, each encounter is an opportunity for God to mold us and shape us into His image. We begin to embrace the idea that God is not just interested in our destination, but in the person we become along the way. He cares about our hearts, our minds, our attitudes, and our actions. As we grow in our relationship with God, we become more aware of the areas of our lives that need His healing touch. We begin to recognize the hidden wounds, the unresolved hurts, the fears and insecurities that we've carried for so long. And in those moments, we allow God to gently heal and restore us. We allow His love to wash over us, cleansing us from the pain and the shame, and replacing it with peace, joy, and freedom. As we walk in this newfound freedom, we also begin to see others through God's. We no longer view people from a place of judgment or criticism, but from a place of love and grace. We realize that everyone is on their own journey, facing their own struggles, and that we are called to walk alongside them with compassion and understanding. We begin to see the beauty in others, not just in their successes, but in their struggles as well. We recognize that God is working in their lives, just as He is working in ours. And as we walk in this understanding, we learn to show mercy and kindness, even when others fall short or hurt. It's in these moments that we discover the true meaning of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not just about letting go of anger or resentment, but about choosing to love and extend grace, just as God has done for us. We learn that forgiveness is not for the other person's benefit, but for our own. It's a way of releasing ourselves from the bondage of bitterness and allowing God's peace to reign in our hearts. As we walk in this forgiveness, we begin to experience a deeper sense of freedom. We no longer carry the weight of past hurts or disappointments. We are free to move forward, to embrace the future that God has for us, without the baggage of the past holding us back. And as we forgive, we open ourselves up to healing. God begins to restore the broken areas of our hearts, and in doing so, He strengthens our ability to love and serve others. We also begin to understand that God's love is not just for us to receive, but for us to share. We are called to be a reflection of His love in the world. As we grow in our relationship with God, we become more aware of the opportunities around us to share His love with others. We begin to see the needs of those around us and feel a deep desire to meet those needs. Whether it's through a kind word, a listening ear, or a tangible act of service, we are called to be the hands and feet of Christ. we begin to see that our purpose is not just about our own personal growth and well-being, but about making a difference in the lives of others. Through serving others that we experience the greatest joy. As we give of ourselves, we find that we are filled with a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. We begin to realize that it is more blessed to give than to receive. This heart of service doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process of transformation. It requires us to let go of our selfish desires and prioritize the needs of others. It requires us to humble ourselves and put others first. And as we do, we begin to experience the heart of God in a deeper way. We learn to love not just with our words, but with our actions. We learn to love sacrificially, just as Christ loved us. As we walk in this love, we also begin to see how God is using us to fulfill His greater purpose. Every conversation, every encounter, every act of service is a part of His plan to bring about His kingdom on earth. We begin to see that God is working through us, using us as vessels of His love and grace to touch the lives of those around us. And as we see the impact of our actions, we are reminded that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. We are part of God's eternal plan, and He is using us to bring about His will on earth. This realization gives us a sense of purpose and urgency. We begin to live with intentionality, knowing that every moment counts, every decision, every action, every word spoken has the potential to impact someone's life for eternity. We are no longer passive observers in our own lives, but active participants in God's grand design. And as we embrace this calling, we begin to live with a sense of joy and fulfillment that only comes from knowing we are walking in the will of God. This journey of transformation is not always easy, but it is always worth it. As we continue to grow in our relationship with God, we begin to see that the process of becoming more like Christ is the greatest adventure we will ever embark on. It is a journey of constant growth, constant learning, and constant surrender. But with each step, we become more and more like the person God has called us to be, and with that comes a peace and joy that transcends anything the world can offer. We begin to realize that this journey is not just about the destination, but about the person we become along the way. It is about learning to trust God more deeply, loving others more fully, and walking in the purpose He has set before us. And as we continue on this path, we can be sure that God is with us every step of the way, guiding us, strengthening us, and shaping us into the person He has called us to be. As we continue our journey with God, we begin to realize that His presence is not just in the grand moments, but also in the quiet, everyday instances that we often overlook. Every small decision, every word spoken, every encounter with another person holds a deeper purpose in God's plan. We begin to see that God is present not only in the extraordinary, but also in the ordinary moments of life. The mundane tasks that once seemed insignificant now hold new meaning, for we know that God is using every part of our lives to shape us and mold us into His image. As we embrace this reality, we learn to approach each day with gratitude and expectancy, knowing that God is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot see. We stop looking for the big signs and start recognizing the subtle, everyday miracles that happen when we open our eyes to God's presence in our lives. This shift in perspective transforms the way we live. We no longer view our circumstances as random or meaningless, but as part of a divine narrative that God is weaving. Each challenge, each hardship, each moment of joy is a thread in the tapestry of our lives that God is carefully crafted. We learn to trust that even when we don't understand why things are happening the way they are, God is at work. His ways are higher than ours, and His plan is far greater than anything we could ever imagine. This trust in God's sovereignty frees us from the burden of trying to control everything. We no longer feel the need to figure everything out on our own, because we know that God is in control. As we surrender our lives to Him, we experience a deep sense of peace that comes from knowing that we are exactly where He wants us to be, even if we don't fully understand the road ahead. It's in these moments of surrender that we discover a deeper intimacy with God. We stop relying on our own understanding and start leaning into His wisdom. We begin to see the world through His eyes, and we understand that His timing is always perfect. We trust that He is leading us exactly where we need to go, even when the path seems uncertain or unclear. This deeper trust in God's timing leads us to live more fully in the present moment. We no longer rush through life, constantly looking ahead to what's next. Instead, we learn to savor the moments we are in, knowing that each one is a gift from God. Whether it's a quiet moment alone with Him, a conversation with a friend, or a simple act of service, we begin to see the beauty in every moment. We realize that life is not just about achieving goals or reaching destinations, but about the journey itself and the person we become along the way. In this journey, we also discover the importance of patience. As we wait for God's timing to unfold, we learn to trust that His plan is worth the wait. Patience doesn't mean sitting idly by, but learning to be faithful in the waiting. It means continuing to seek God, to serve others, and to walk in obedience, even when the results are not immediate. Through patience, we grow in character and strength, learning to rely on God's provision and timing. The waiting seasons are not wasted. They are times of preparation and growth, refining us for what is to come. As we continue to walk in patience, we also begin to see how God uses the waiting seasons to teach us more about His nature. We learn that He is faithful, trustworthy, and always present, even in the moments when it feels like we are waiting alone. We also learn to appreciate the process of transformation. It's easy to focus on the end goal, but God is more concerned with who we are becoming than what we are achieving. Each step in our journey is part of His plan to shape us into the image of Christ. We begin to see that the trials, the waiting, the uncertainty, and even the pain are all tools that God uses to refine us. It's in these moments that we learn to depend on God's strength rather than our own, and to trust that He is working everything for our good. This understanding gives us the courage to face whatever comes our way, knowing that we are not alone. We can stand firm, knowing that God is with us, guiding us, and empowering us to walk through the challenges with grace and strength. As we continue to grow in our faith, we also begin to see how God uses us to impact the world around us. We realize that our lives are not just about us, they are about how we can be a reflection of God's love to others. We are called to serve, to love, and to be a light in the world. As we grow in this understanding, we become more attuned to the needs of those around us. We begin to see opportunities to serve, to encourage, and to bless others, whether through our words, our actions, or simply by being present. The more we walk in God's love, the more we desire to share it with others. We learn that it is through serving others that we experience the greatest joy and fulfillment. When we love and serve others, we are living out the very purpose for which we were created. This heart of service leads us to a deeper understanding of what it means to be Christ-like. We begin to see that true greatness is found not in being served, but in serving others. As we walk in this humility, we experience the joy that comes from knowing we are doing exactly what God has called us to do. We also realize that our ability to serve others is not dependent on our own strength or ability, but on God's strength working in and through us. We learn to rely on His power, not our own, and in doing so, we experience His grace in a new and deeper way. This deeper dependence on God's strength leads us to a life of greater peace and contentment. We stop striving to make things happen on our own and begin to trust that God will provide everything we need. We learn that contentment is not found in what we have or what we achieve, but in knowing that we are living in alignment with God's will for our lives. As we continue on this journey, we become more aware of God's presence in every moment. We stop rushing through life, always focused on the next thing, and begin to live fully in the present. We realize that the greatest joy is found not in what we accomplish, but in knowing that we are walking with God day by day, step by step. The more we walk with God, the more we realize that He is everything we need. He is our strength, our peace, our joy, and our purpose. With each step we take, we grow closer to Him, and with each step, we become more of the person He created us to be. This journey of faith is not always easy, but it is always worth it. As we continue to trust God and walk in obedience, we discover the depth of His love, the power of His presence, and the joy that comes from living in alignment with His will. As we continue to journey through life with God, we begin to understand that His ways are far beyond our comprehension. Every step we take is part of a divine blueprint that God has designed specifically for us, intricately woven into the fabric of our lives. It becomes increasingly clear that our lives are not our own, but are part of a larger story that God is unfolding in and through us. Each experience, each challenge, each victory is a piece of the puzzle, and we begin to see how all things are working together for our good. In moments of uncertainty, we realize that these are the times when God is stretching our faith the most. The seasons of waiting, the times when things don't seem to be progressing the way we envisioned, are actually the times when we are growing the most. These are the times when God is preparing us for something greater, molding us into vessels that can hold His purpose for our lives. As we look back on the times of trial and challenge, we begin to see that they were not in vain. We can see how each hardship has shaped us, strengthened us, and made us more resilient. It's through these experiences that we learn to lean more fully on God, to trust Him even when things are hard, and to know that His timing is always perfect. We learn that we don't have to have all the answers or know how everything will unfold, because we trust in the one who holds our future. We learn that it's okay to not have everything figured out. In fact, it's in the moments of uncertainty that we grow the most. As we continue on this path, we also come to realize the importance of surrendering our plans to God. We often hold on tightly to our dreams, goals, and desires, but there are times when God asks us to release those things and trust Him with the outcome. This act of surrender can be difficult, especially when we don't fully understand why God is leading us in a particular direction. But as we surrender our plans to Him, we open ourselves up to His greater plans for us. We begin to understand that God's vision for our lives is far better than anything we could have ever imagined. When we release our own control, we make room for God to move in ways that exceed our expectations. We start to see that His plans are always filled with purpose, and His timing is always perfect. This surrender is not a one-time event, but a continual process of laying down our own desires and embracing God's will. It's a daily choice to trust Him, even when we don't fully understand the road ahead. As we walk in this surrendered life, we also begin to recognize the importance of cultivating a heart of gratitude. In the midst of life's challenges, it can be easy to focus on what we don't have or what hasn't yet come to fruition. However, when we shift our focus to what we do have, God's love, His provision, His presence, we begin to experience a deep sense of peace and content. Gratitude helps us see God's faithfulness in every season of life. It reminds us that no matter what we face, God is always with us. His love never fails, and His provision is endless. As we cultivate this gratitude, we begin to see the world around us through new. We stop taking things for granted and begin to appreciate the beauty of each day, each breath, and each moment. We recognize that everything we have is a gift from God, and we are filled with awe and wonder at His goodness. Gratitude also transforms the way we interact with others. When we are grateful for what God has done in our lives, we are more likely to extend that same grace and love to those around us. We begin to see others through the lens of compassion, understanding that everyone is on their own journey and facing their own struggle. Just as God has been patient with us, we learn to be patient with others. As we walk in this grace-filled mindset, we start to see how God is using us to touch the lives of those around us. We become more attuned to the needs of others, and we feel a deep desire to serve and help those in need. We begin to realize that serving others is not just an act of kindness, but an act of worship. Through serving, we are reflecting the love of Christ, and in doing so, we grow closer to Him. Our hearts are stretched as we give of ourselves, and we begin to see that the more we pour out, the more God fills us. We learn that in giving we receive, in serving we are transformed. This attitude of service is not just about doing things for others, but about having a heart that is open and willing to meet the needs of those around us. We learn to love with action, not just words, and as we do, we experience a deeper sense of fulfillment and purpose. Our service becomes an overflow of the love God has poured into our hearts. We begin to understand that life is not about accumulating wealth or success, but about using what we have to bless others. This shift in focus changes the way we no longer live for ourselves, but for the glory of God and the good of others. As we continue in this journey of growth and transformation, we also learn the importance of perseverance. There will be times when we feel like giving up, when the road ahead seems too long and the obstacles too great. But in those moments, God reminds us that He is with us, strengthening us, and giving us the endurance we need to keep going. We learn that perseverance is not about our own strength, but about relying on God's strength to carry us through. It's in these moments of trial that our faith is refined, and we learn to trust God even more deeply. We begin to see that the process of perseverance is not just about reaching the destination, but about becoming the person God has called us to be along the way. Through perseverance, we grow in character, faith, and dependence on. The more we persevere, the stronger we become, and the more we reflect God's glory in our lives. As we continue to grow in perseverance, we also learn the importance of community. We were never meant to walk this journey alone. God has placed people in our lives to support us, encourage us, and walk alongside us. As we share our struggles and victories with others, we strengthen one another's faith. Community is not just about finding people who agree with us, but about finding people who challenge us, encourage us, and help us grow. It's through our relationships with others that we experience God's love in a deeper. We learn that we are all part of the body of Christ, each with our own unique gifts and callings, and when we work together, we can accomplish far more than we could ever do on our own. As we continue to grow in our faith, we learn to rely on God's power and wisdom more fully. We begin to see that we are not capable of living the life God has called us to live on our own. We need His strength, His guidance, and His presence in every area of our lives. The more we surrender to Him, the more we are transformed, and the more we begin to reflect His love, grace, and truth to the world around us. This transformation is a lifelong process, but with each step, we become more of the person God has designed us to be. And as we walk in this transformation, we experience a deep sense of peace, knowing that we are exactly where God wants us to be and that He is with us every step of the way. Our lives become a testimony to His faithfulness, and we begin to see the beauty in the process, knowing that each moment is an opportunity for growth, refinement, and alignment with His perfect will. As we move forward in our walk with God, we begin to realize that the journey is not a straight path. Life in all its complexities is full of twists and turns, highs and lows, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. But it is precisely through this journey that we learn to rely more deeply on God. The more we walk with Him, the more we understand that His ways are not our ways, but His plans are always better than anything we could have ever imagined. We begin to understand that God's purpose for our lives is not to give us a comfortable, pain-free existence, but to use every experience, every trial, every triumph to shape us into the people He created us to be. And though there are times when we feel as though we are walking through the wilderness, it is in these moments that we learn the most about our own faith. God uses these seasons of uncertainty to refine us, to teach us, and to mold us into people who are more like Christ. It's in the midst of our struggles that we learn to lean on God's strength rather than our own. We begin to understand that our weakness is not something to be ashamed of, but something that God can use to demonstrate His power. The more we acknowledge our limitations, the more we make room for God to work in and through us. We stop trying to rely on our own abilities and start to trust in God's sufficiency. This realization leads us to a place of surrender. We begin to understand that the more we hold on tightly to our own desires and plans, the less room we allow for God to move in our lives. But when we open our hands and release control, we make space for God to work in ways that are beyond our understanding. Surrendering is not about giving up. It is about trusting God's timing and His wisdom. As we surrender, we begin to experience a peace that surpasses all understanding. We start to realize that we don't have to have everything figured out because God has already figured it out for us. He knows the path ahead, and He is leading us exactly where we need to go. And as we walk in His will, we begin to see the beauty of His plans unfold. We start to see how He uses even the difficult moments of our lives for good. It is through these trials that we learn to become more compassionate, more patient, and more understanding. We learn to trust that God is always at work, even when we cannot see it. And as we learn to walk in faith, we begin to see that God's timing is always perfect. There are moments when we may feel like we are waiting for something that seems so far out of reach. But in those moments of waiting, God is preparing us for what is to come. We begin to realize that waiting is not wasted time. It is in the waiting that God deepens our faith, strengthens our character, and prepares us for the next season of our lives. We learn that when we wait on God, we are not waiting passively, but actively trusting Him to work in our lives. We learn to be still and know that He is God. And as we learn to wait with patience, we also learn the importance of trusting in God's provision. We begin to understand that God knows exactly what we need and when we need it. Whether it's wisdom, strength, or resources, God provides for us in ways that we could never have predicted. And when we trust in His provision, we find that He is faithful to supply all our needs. We realize that there is nothing we lack when we are walking in God's will. And as we grow in this understanding, we learn to be content with whatever God provides. Contentment doesn't mean that we stop striving or desiring better things, but it means that we trust God with what we have and are thankful for His provision. It means that we stop comparing ourselves to others and start appreciating what God has given us. As we continue to walk in this trust and contentment, we begin to understand the power of gratitude. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we don't have to what we do have. It helps us to see the blessings in our lives, even in the midst of hardship. When we choose to focus on what we are thankful for, we open ourselves up to experiencing more joy, peace, and fulfillment. Gratitude brings a sense of peace to our hearts, knowing that we are loved by God, no matter our circumstance. And as we continue to live with a heart of gratitude, we begin to see how much we are loved by God. We realize that God's love for us is not based on what we do or how well we perform, but on His unconditional love for us. His love is a constant, unwavering presence in our lives, and it is through His love that we find our true identity. We no longer find our worth in our achievements, possessions, or status, but in the fact that we are beloved children of God. This understanding of God's love transforms the way we see ourselves and the way we see others. We begin to treat ourselves with the same love and grace that God shows us. We learn to extend grace to ourselves when we fall short, knowing that God is not disappointed in us, but that He is always there to pick us up and guide us forward. We also learn to extend that same grace to others. We stop judging others based on their mistakes or shortcomings, but instead, we see them as God sees them, worthy of love, grace, and forgiveness. This shift in perspective changes the way we approach relationships. We begin to love others, not for what they can do for us, but for who they are. We learn to serve others, not out of obligation, but out of love. Serving becomes an overflow of the love that God has poured into our hearts. And as we serve others, we experience the joy and fulfillment that comes from reflecting Christ's love in the world. As we grow in this understanding, we begin to realize that God has called us to live with purpose. Our lives are not meant to be lived for ourselves, but for others. We are called to be a light in the world, to bring hope and healing to those around us. This purpose is not something we have to discover on our own. It is something God has already planned for us. As we align our lives with God's will, we begin to see the opportunities He has placed before us to make a difference in the world. And as we step into this purpose, we begin to realize that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. We are part of God's kingdom, and He is using us to bring about His will on earth. This understanding gives us a sense of urgency and a deeper sense of responsibility. We realize that every moment, every decision, every action has the potential to impact the world for eternity. As we continue to walk with God, we begin to see that our lives are meant to be a reflection of His love, grace, and truth. We are not just living for ourselves, but for the glory of God. Every step we take, every action we make, becomes an opportunity to bring honor to His name and to further His kingdom on earth. And as we live with this purpose, we experience the fulfillment that comes from knowing we are walking in alignment with God's will for our lives. This journey may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. And with each step, we become more of the person God has created us to be, and our lives become a testimony to His faithfulness and love. As we continue to walk deeper in our relationship with God, we begin to realize that the journey is not simply about reaching a destination, but about transformation. Every step we take, every decision we make, and every encounter we have is part of God's master plan, leading us to become more like Christ. The process of becoming like Him is ongoing, and we realize that there will be no final destination where we reach perfection in this life. Instead, we are continually shaped, molded, and refined as we move forward. With each new experience, we gain a deeper understanding of who God is and what He is doing in our lives. This awareness brings a sense of peace and assurance, because we understand that God is in control, even when things seem chaotic or uncertain. We are no longer driven by our own desires or plans, but by the desire to fulfill God's purpose for us. As we surrender our own agendas, we find that God's will is always better than our own. This journey of transformation is not always smooth, and there will be times when we feel discouraged or even defeated. But these moments of weakness are not signs of failure. They are opportunities for growth. They are moments when we learn to lean on God even more fully, trusting that He will carry us through. Through these times of struggle, we are reminded that we are not meant to walk this journey alone. God has placed people in our lives to walk with us, to encourage us, and to support us. The beauty of the Christian walk is that we are part of a community, a body of believers who are all striving toward the same goal. As we lean on each other, we are reminded that we are not in this alone. We are not isolated. We are part of something bigger, a family of believers who are all united in Christ. This connection with others helps us stay grounded in our faith. It encourages us to keep moving forward when we feel like giving up, knowing that others are walking beside us, praying for us, and cheering us on. The power of community becomes even more evident. when we face challenges. In these times, our relationships with others become a source of strength. We learn the importance of sharing our struggles, not holding them in, but allowing others to support us and help carry the load. In turn, we are also called to help others in their times of need. It becomes a cycle of love, encouragement, and support that strengthens us all. And as we help others through their own struggles, we begin to see how God works in and through us to accomplish His purpose. The more we serve others, the more we experience the joy that comes from reflecting Christ's love in the world. Serving others isn't always easy, and it requires us to lay down our own desires and comfort in order to meet the needs of those around us. But in these moments of selflessness, we find that we are the ones who are blessed. We experience the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing we are walking in God's will, serving others just as Christ served us. As we serve, we also grow in humility. We begin to understand that true greatness is found in serving others, not in being served. This understanding shifts our perspective on life. We no longer seek validation or recognition, but we learn to find fulfillment in knowing that we are doing God's work. This desire to serve leads us to a deeper understanding of God's heart. We begin to see people through His eyes, recognizing their worth and value, not based on their status or achievements, but because they are beloved children of God. This awareness transforms the way we interact with people. We stop seeing others through the lens of comparison, judgment, or criticism, and we begin to see them through the lens of grace and love. We realize that everyone is on their own journey, and just as God has been patient with us, we are called to be patient with others. We learn to love people where they are, not where we want them to be, and to trust that God is working in their lives just as He is working in ours. This love for others becomes the driving force behind everything we do. It motivates us to seek out opportunities to serve, to encourage, and to be a source of light in the world. We no longer live for ourselves, but for the glory of God and the good of others. As we live with this focus, we realize that life is not about achieving personal success or accumulating wealth or status. It is about fulfilling the purpose that God has set for us. Every day is an opportunity to be a reflection of His love in the world. The more we live with this purpose in mind, the more we experience the fulfillment that comes from knowing we are walking in alignment with God's will. This sense of purpose gives us a renewed energy and passion for life. We are no longer driven by the world's standards of success or happiness, but by the desire to live in a way that honors God. We start to see that true success is not measured by what we accumulate, but by how we use our gifts and talents to serve others and bring glory to God. This new perspective leads us to embrace the journey, not just the destination. We begin to see every moment as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become more like Christ. Whether we are going through a season of joy or a season of trial, we trust that God is using every moment to shape us. We stop focusing on the end result and begin to appreciate the process, knowing that God is at work in every step of the journey. And in this process, we also come to understand the importance of perseverance. There will be times when we feel exhausted or discouraged, when the road ahead seems long and difficult. But it is in these times that our faith is tested and refined. We learn to rely on God's strength rather than our own, trusting that He will provide the endurance we need to finish the race. Perseverance doesn't mean never struggling. It means pressing on even when things get tough, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. As we persevere, we also learn to celebrate the victories, no matter how small they may seem. Every step forward, every moment of growth, is something to be thankful for. We begin to see that even the small victories are part of God's plan, and that He is glorified in every step we take toward becoming more like Him. With each victory, we grow in confidence, knowing that God is faithful to complete the work He has started in us. We also learn to trust God's timing. There are times when we feel like things are moving too slowly, or that we are not seeing the results we want. But in those moments, we are reminded that God's timing is always perfect. He knows exactly when to move and when to wait. He knows what we need and when we need it. And as we trust in His timing, we learn to rest in His peace, knowing that He is working behind the scenes to bring about His will in our lives. This trust in God's timing allows us to move through life with greater peace and content. We no longer feel anxious or worried about what is to come, but we trust that God is in control. We learn that we don't have to have everything figured out right now because God already has it all worked out. This realization brings a deep sense of relief, and we find ourselves walking through life with greater freedom and joy, knowing that we are walking in God's will. As we continue to surrender to God's will, we start to see life through a clearer lens. The trials and tribulations that once seemed like overwhelming obstacles now appear as opportunities for growth and refinement. Each challenge becomes an invitation to deepen our trust in God, to rely on Him more fully, and to see how He works all things together for our good. It is in these moments of hardship that we experience the beauty of God's grace. We realize that it's not about avoiding difficulty, but about learning to navigate through it with God's strength. Each trial becomes a stepping stone that helps us grow stronger in our faith. Through these moments, we also learn the importance of resilience. Resilience is not about bouncing back quickly from adversity, but about enduring with grace, trusting that God is working in the midst of our struggle. It's about embracing the discomfort and uncertainty, knowing that we are not walking through these challenges alone. God is with us every step of the way, strengthening us, comforting us, and guiding us through the hardest of times. As we develop this resilience, we start to realize that our pain and struggles are not in vain. God is using them to shape us, to teach us patience, perseverance, and character. We start to see that these experiences are refining us to become more like Christ. Our struggles become a testament to God's faithfulness, as we can look back and see how He brought us through even the most difficult times. As we continue to surrender to God's plan, we begin to recognize how His presence fills the spaces of our lives. Even in the ordinary moments, we start to see the extraordinary nature of His work. God's involvement in our lives is not limited to the big events or milestones, but is woven into every moment, every decision, and every relationship. We begin to understand that life is a series of divine appointments, each one ordained by God to fulfill His purpose. We begin to walk through life with more intentionality, knowing that each encounter, no matter how small, holds potential for impact. We start to realize that God has placed us in specific situations and relationships for a reason. Whether it's a brief encounter with a stranger, a deep conversation with a friend, or a seemingly routine task at work, we begin to see how each moment is an opportunity for God to use us. As we embrace this calling, we recognize the responsibility we carry as representatives of Christ. We start to live with greater awareness, seeking to reflect God's love and truth in all we do. We begin to recognize the power of our words and actions, and how they can influence the world around us. Each decision we make, whether in our personal lives, our relationships, or our work, becomes an opportunity to honor God and fulfill His will. With this new understanding, we become more intentional about our choices. We begin to seek God's guidance in even the smallest decisions, trusting that He will lead us in the right direction. We understand that our lives are meant to be a reflection of His character, and so we strive to live in a way that honors Him. This awareness of God's presence leads us to a deeper understanding of the significance of every relationship we have. We begin to see that our relationships are not just about our own personal fulfillment or enjoyment, but are a means by which God works in and through us. We learn to approach relationships with humility, recognizing that we are not perfect and that we all have room for growth. God uses our relationships to refine us, to teach us how to love, forgive, and serve others. As we grow in our relationship with God, we begin to see the importance of being intentional in how we love and serve those around us. We stop taking relationships for granted and begin to recognize that each person we encounter is an opportunity to show Christ's love. Whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, or even a stranger, we start to see that everyone is made in God's image and is worthy of love and respect. This understanding changes the way we interact with others. We no longer seek to use others for our own benefit, but we seek to serve them, to love them as God loves us. We start to see that true love is sacrificial, that it's not about receiving but about giving. The more we serve others, the more we become like Christ. As we serve, we begin to experience the joy and fulfillment that comes from living out God's will in our lives. We recognize that our purpose is not found in personal success or material possessions, but in serving others and bringing glory to God. We also start to understand that we are called to be good stewards of the gifts and resources God has given us. Whether it's our time, talents, or finances, we are entrusted with these things to serve God and others. We begin to live with greater generosity, giving freely of what we have, knowing that it all comes from God. As we do this, we experience a deeper sense of contentment, knowing that we are fulfilling the purpose God has set before us. We also begin to see the importance of living with integrity. Integrity is about being true to our values, no matter the cost. It's about being honest, trustworthy, and reliable, even when no one is watching. We begin to realize that living with integrity is not just about doing the right thing when it's easy, but about staying true to our convictions when it's hard. As we grow in our faith, we learn that living with integrity is a reflection of God's character. We begin to see that God is faithful, and so we are called to be faithful as well. This commitment to integrity affects every area of our lives, from our personal relationships to our work and everything in between. We begin to see that it is not just our words but our actions that matter. As we live with integrity, we earn the trust of others and become a powerful witness to God's truth. This commitment to integrity also leads us to understand the importance of accountability. We recognize that we are not meant to walk this journey alone, and that we need others to help us stay on track. Whether it's through a mentor, a small group, or a trusted friend, we begin to value the relationships that help us grow spiritually and personally. We learn that accountability is not about judgment, but about encouragement and support. Through accountability, we are able to stay focused on God's will for our lives and avoid the pitfalls that can lead us astray. As we continue to grow in our relationship with God, we begin to understand that His plan for us is not just about us as individuals, but about the impact we can have on the world around us. We recognize that God has placed us in specific positions and relationships to be a light in the world, to reflect His love and truth to those who need it most. This understanding gives us a sense of purpose and urgency. We begin to live with intentionality, knowing that every moment is an opportunity to serve God and others. Whether it's through our words, actions, or simply by being present, we begin to see that we have the power to make a difference. As we walk in this purpose, we experience the fulfillment that comes from living in alignment with God's will. We begin to realize that life is not just about achieving our own goals, but about fulfilling the greater purpose God has set before us. This realization brings a deeper sense of joy, knowing that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. As we continue to walk in alignment with God's will, we begin to understand the immense responsibility that comes with this journey. We realize that it is not just about our own spiritual growth, but about how our lives impact others around us. Every action, every word, every choice is a reflection of the character we are developing in Christ. We begin to realize that our influence extends beyond the people we know personally, and in fact it reaches into places we may never even see. Through the way we live, through the way we reflect God's love, we become part of a bigger story, a story that God is writing not only in our lives, but in the lives of others. As we embrace this, we begin to see the profound impact of our decisions, no matter how small they seem. Every day is an opportunity to live in such a way that points others toward Christ. We are no longer living just for ourselves, but for a higher purpose, to bring glory to God and to further His kingdom. This realization deepens our understanding of what it means to live with intentionality. We no longer go through life passively, merely reacting to events and circumstances, but we live with purpose, knowing that every choice we make carries eternal significance. This mindset shifts how we approach the mundane and the extraordinary alike. Whether we are performing simple tasks or facing significant challenges, we begin to see that each is an opportunity to glorify God, to reflect His love, and to demonstrate His grace. As we continue to walk with God, we also begin to see the importance of embracing our weakness. We understand that it is not in our strength that God's power is most evident, but in our weakness. It is in our vulnerability that we can experience God's grace more profoundly. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge our limitations and surrender our need for control, we open ourselves to the transformative work of God. We begin to see that God is not looking for perfection from us, but a willing heart, a heart that is open to His guidance and ready to be shaped by His hands. We learn that it is through these moments of brokenness, when we feel we are at our lowest, that God's strength is made perfect. In those times, we discover a depth of peace and joy that transcends our circumstances. Through this process, we begin to embrace the value of surrendering our own plans. We learn that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our desires or expectations. There are times when we may not understand why things are unfolding the way they are, but as we lean on God, we learn to trust His plan, knowing that it is good and that His ways are always higher than ours. In these moments of surrender, we find freedom. We are no longer weighed down by the pressure of trying to control everything, and we begin to experience the freedom that comes from knowing that God has everything under control. This freedom brings us peace, knowing that we don't have to have all the answers, because God already. As we grow in our faith, we also begin to understand the importance of living with gratitude. Gratitude shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have, and it helps us see the blessings in every situation. Even in the midst of trials, we begin to recognize the ways God is working in our lives. Gratitude helps us see the good in the midst of the bad and gives us the strength to continue on even when things are difficult. When we choose to live with a grateful heart, we open ourselves to more joy, more peace, and more of God's presence. Gratitude transforms our hearts, enabling us to see the world around us with new eyes. We begin to appreciate the small things, the simple moments that we once overlooked. We learn to celebrate the beauty of each day, knowing that every moment is a gift from God. This shift in perspective also changes the way we relate to others. We become more patient, more understanding, and more compassionate. We realize that everyone is on their own journey, and just as God has shown us grace, we are called to show grace to others. We learn that relationships are a gift, and that the people in our lives are there for a reason. We begin to see how our relationships are opportunities to serve, to love, and to encourage others, just as Christ has done for us. As we grow in this understanding, we also learn the importance of rest. Rest is not just a physical need, but a spiritual one. We realize that when we take time to rest, we are acknowledging that we are not the ones who hold everything together, but that God is. We learn to trust Him with our burdens, and in doing so, we experience a peace that comes from knowing that He is in control. Rest is also an act of surrender. When we rest, we allow God to work in the background, to accomplish what we cannot do on our own. In those moments of rest, we are reminded of God's faithfulness and His ability to take care of every detail of our lives. This understanding of rest leads us to live with greater balance. We realize that we are not meant to work ourselves into the ground, but that we are called to live in rhythm with God, allowing time for work, for rest, for play, and for relationship. As we learn to live in this balance, we discover a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. We understand that God is with us in every season, and that He will give us the strength we need to handle whatever comes our way. We also begin to see the power of forgiveness, both in our own lives and in the lives of others. We realize that forgiveness is not just about letting go of resentment, but about freeing ourselves from the weight of anger and bitterness. When we forgive, we open ourselves up to healing, and we allow God to work in our heart. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget the wrongs done to us, or that we condone hurtful behavior, but it means choosing to release the hold that anger has on us. In forgiveness, we find freedom, and we begin to experience the peace that comes from releasing the pain of the past. As we walk in this freedom, we also learn to extend grace to others. We begin to see that everyone is on their own journey, and that we are all in need of God's grace. When we learn to give grace, we begin to reflect God's love more fully in the world. Our relationships are transformed, and we become instruments of healing and peace. This process of growth and transformation is ongoing. Every day is an opportunity to grow closer to God, to reflect His love more fully, and to live in greater alignment with His will. We begin to see that life is not just about achieving goals or accumulating success, but about becoming more like Christ, about loving others the way He loves us, and about serving in ways that bring glory to God. And as we live with this understanding, we experience a deeper sense of joy, peace, and fulfillment than we ever could have imagined. We know that we are living with purpose, and that each moment, no matter how small, is an opportunity to reflect Christ's love in the world. As we deepen our understanding of God's work in our lives, we begin to realize that each day is a canvas where God is painting His masterpiece. Every moment, whether mundane or extraordinary, becomes a stroke of His divine brush, shaping us into who we are meant to be. This realization shifts our focus from just surviving each day to truly living with purpose and intention. The distractions and anxieties of life begin to lose their grip on us as we embrace the truth that God is actively involved in every aspect of our lives, even the seemingly small or insignificant part. We start to see that the seemingly routine tasks we undertake are not mere obligations, but opportunities to honor God with our actions, to bring glory to Him through the ordinary. The very act of waking up each day, of interacting with those around us, becomes an offering to God. This awareness also deepens our understanding of what it means to be faithful. Faithfulness is not just about believing in God, but about living each day with a commitment to His will. It is about walking in His steps, even when the path is unclear, trusting that He knows the way. The more we focus on being faithful in the small things, the more we begin to see the significance of our daily lives. We understand that God values our efforts, no matter how small they seem in the grand scheme of life. The way we handle our responsibilities, the way we treat others, the way we honor our commitments, All of these are acts of faithfulness that God sees and honors. As we embrace this, we learn that faithfulness is a fruit of the Spirit, something that grows as we walk closer with God. It becomes less about striving and more about yielding to His presence, allowing Him to work through us. This understanding of faithfulness also leads us to a deeper relationship with God. We realize that as we stay close to Him, our hearts align more with His, and our desires become more in line with His purpose for our lives. Our prayers shift from asking for what we want to seeking God's will for every area of our lives. We begin to ask God, "What do you want from me today, and how can I serve you in this moment?" This shift in perspective helps us to view our lives not as a series of events to be endured, but as a journey to be embraced with God at the center. As we continue this journey, we learn the importance of patience in the process. Growth is not immediate, and transformation doesn't happen overnight. There are times when it feels like we are not progressing, like we are stuck or stagnant, but in those moments we are reminded that God's work in us is always ongoing. Like a seed that grows in the soil, it may not be visible at first, but over time the change becomes evident. We are called to trust in God's timing, knowing that He is working behind the scenes, preparing us for what lies ahead. Patience teaches us to wait on the Lord, to trust that His plan is unfolding even when we cannot see the full picture. This patience also teaches us to be content with where we are in the process. We learn that true peace is found not in our circumstances, but in trusting God with our future. As we cultivate patience, we also begin to experience God's presence in a new way. We realize that waiting on God is not a passive act, but an active one. It is in the waiting that we are refined, our hearts are stretched, and our faith is strengthened. During the times of waiting, God is teaching us to rely on Him more fully, to deepen our trust in His goodness, and to prepare us for the next step in His plan. As we learn to wait with patience, we also learn the importance of resilience in our spiritual journey. Resilience is not simply the ability to bounce back after hardship, but the strength to keep moving forward, even when it feels difficult. It is the determination to press on when we face setbacks, knowing that God's purpose for our lives is still in motion and that He is faithful to complete what He has started. Resilience also teaches us to hold on to hope, even in the midst of challenges. It is the ability to look beyond our current circumstances and to see the bigger picture of what God is doing in our lives. This resilience helps us face life with a sense of purpose and joy, knowing that no matter what happens, we are being shaped for something greater. It's in these times of resilience that we truly grow in our faith, as we learn to trust God even when it's hard. As we walk through these seasons, we also begin to appreciate the power of community. God has designed us to be relational beings, and it is through our connections with others that we often experience His love and presence most profoundly. Relationships become a reflection of God's heart for us. We are called to live in community, to share our lives with others, to bear each other's burdens, and to encourage one another in our walk with God. We begin to realize that no one is meant to walk alone and that God uses our relationships to help us grow and to fulfill His purpose. This understanding of community also deepens our awareness of the needs around us. We begin to see that the people in our lives are not there by accident. Every relationship is an opportunity to reflect Christ's love and to show His grace to others. We begin to ask ourselves how we can serve those around us, how we can meet the needs of those who are hurting, and how we can be a source of light in the world. Through these acts of service, we not only help others but also grow in our own faith. Serving others helps us develop a heart of humility and gratitude, and it strengthens our understanding of God's call to love and serve as He did. As we live with this understanding, we begin to see that our lives are meant to be a reflection of God's love in the world. Everything we do, from the way we treat others to the way we handle our responsibilities, is an opportunity to live out God's love and truth. We stop focusing on what we want to accomplish in life and start focusing on what God wants to accomplish through us. This shift in perspective brings a deep sense of purpose as we realize that our lives are part of something far greater than ourselves. We begin to see every challenge, every opportunity, and every encounter as an opportunity to glorify God and to share His love with others. As we continue to walk with God, we are reminded that this journey is not about achieving our own dreams or building our own kingdom, but about fulfilling God's purpose for our lives. It is about becoming more like Christ, reflecting His love and bringing glory to God in everything we do. This realization brings a deep sense of peace and joy, knowing that we are living according to God's will and that our lives are part of His eternal plan. In this journey, we are continually being transformed, shaped by God's love, grace, and truth. We are being made more like Christ, not by our own efforts, but by the power of God working in us. And as we continue on this path, we know that each day brings new opportunities to reflect Christ, serve others, and glorify God in all that we do. As we press forward in our journey with God, we begin to realize that the essence of living a faithful life is not found in the grandeur of our achievements or in the accomplishments we amass, but in the quiet, consistent pursuit of God's will. Every choice we make, every action we take, is an opportunity to either align ourselves more closely with His purpose or drift away from it. This awareness shapes how we approach life itself. We understand that faithfulness is not something we can merely choose in isolated moments, but a continual day-by-day commitment to live according to the standards God has set for us. Each new day is a fresh opportunity to recommit ourselves to this path of following Christ. As we continue in this journey, we find that the more we commit to living for God, the more we discover the fullness of His grace in our lives. This grace does not just cover our shortcomings, but empowers us to live out our calling with passion, perseverance, and joy. We are no longer living in our own strength, but are sustained by the power of God working within us. This recognition leads us to deeper gratitude. We start to see that every breath we take, every moment we have, is a gift from God. The ability to live and breathe in His grace is not something to be taken lightly. As we recognize the abundance of God's provision in our lives, we begin to live with an open hand, ready to give to others what He has freely given. This shift in perspective helps us realize that living faithfully is not just about our personal relationship with God, but about how we live out that relationship with others. As we deepen our understanding of God's grace and love, we begin to understand the power of forgiveness more fully. Forgiveness is not just about releasing others from the debt they owe us, but about setting ourselves free from the chains of resentment and bitterness. When we forgive, we are not just offering grace to those who have wronged us, but also inviting the transformative power of God's love to heal and restore our heart. We begin to recognize that holding on to anger and unforgiveness only hinders our own spiritual growth and our ability to truly walk in the freedom Christ offers us. With this new understanding, we also realize that the ability to forgive is a sign of maturity in our faith. It shows that we are not controlled by our emotions, but are choosing to walk in the light of God's love and mercy. Forgiveness becomes an expression of the love we have received from God and an invitation to share that love with others. In this process, we also begin to see how God's love for us is unconditional. His love is not based on our performance or how well we measure up to His standards, but on His nature. God loves us simply because we are His creation, and no matter how far we stray, His love for us remains constant. As we grasp the depth of this love, we begin to realize that our ability to love others is not based on their worth or actions, but on God's love for them. Our love for others, in essence, becomes a reflection of God's love for us. This leads us to live in a way that mirrors Christ's love, sacrificially and unconditionally. The more we walk in this love, the more we experience true peace. It is a peace that comes not from external circumstances, but from knowing that we are right with God, that we are walking in His will, and that we are part of His eternal purpose. This peace is not dependent on what we have or what we can achieve, but on the unchanging truth that God is with us and that He is in control. As we continue on this path, we begin to see that peace is not the absence of problems or challenges, but the presence of God in the midst of those challenges. We learn that peace is found not in escaping life's difficulties, but in facing them with God by our side, trusting that He will bring us through each storm stronger and more steadfast. With this peace comes a deep sense of purpose. We realize that every day, every choice, every moment is an opportunity to be part of God's redemptive plan. We are not mere bystanders in this journey of faith. We are active participants in the unfolding of God's kingdom on earth. This realization brings a sense of urgency to our lives. We understand that our time here is limited and that each moment counts. We begin to approach life with intentionality, seeking to live in a way that reflects the character of Christ in all we do. The way we speak to others, the way we handle our work, the way we respond to difficulties, all become opportunities to make a difference for God's kingdom. As we live with this awareness, we also come to see the importance of perseverance. Perseverance is not simply about enduring trials, but about continuing to trust in God's goodness and faithfulness through every circumstance. We learn that our faith is refined through testing, and it is through these trials that we grow in strength, character, and dependence on. We begin to understand that challenges are not signs that God has abandoned us, but signs that He is preparing us for greater things. Every difficulty we face becomes a tool that God uses to shape us, to deepen our faith, and to strengthen our resilience. As we persevere, we also learn to appreciate the process of sanctification. Sanctification is the lifelong journey of becoming more like Christ. It is not a destination, but a continual process of transformation. We learn that there is no shortcut to spiritual maturity, but it is developed over time through our daily choices, our struggles, our victories, and our faithfulness to God. This journey of sanctification teaches us that God is always working in us, even when we don't. Every step we take in faith, no matter how small, is an opportunity for God to work in our lives, to transform us into the people He created us to be. As we grow in our understanding of God's purpose, we also come to see that the Christian life is not one of isolation, but one of community. We are not meant to walk this path alone. God has surrounded us with others who can support, encourage, and hold us accountable. Our relationships with other believers become a source of strength and encouragement. We begin to realize that the church is not just a building, but a family of believers who are called to walk alongside each other, to bear one another's burdens, and to spur each other on toward love and good deeds. This community provides a foundation of support, prayer, and wisdom that strengthens us as we continue to pursue God's purpose for our lives. As we walk in this community, we also begin to see the importance of service. We are called to serve not out of obligation, but out of love. Service becomes a way of reflecting God's love and grace to others. The more we serve, the more we become like Christ, who came not to be served, but to serve others. As we serve, we grow in humility, learning to put others before ourselves and to seek the good of those around us. In this process, we realize that our lives are not our own. We are here to serve God and to serve others, and it is through this service that we find true fulfillment and joy. This life of service leads us to a deeper relationship with God. We begin to understand that the more we pour ourselves out for others, the more God fills us. The more we give, the more we receive. We experience the depth of God's love in a new way, knowing that His love never runs out but is always abundant. As we live in this abundance, we become channels of God's love to the world, sharing His grace and truth with everyone we meet. As we move deeper into the journey of faith, we begin to recognize that God's purpose for our lives is far more intricate and profound than we could have ever imagined. The path He has designed for us is not just a personal quest for fulfillment or happiness, but a calling to be agents of His kingdom here on earth. This realization shifts our perspective from self-centeredness to God-centeredness. We start to understand that everything we do, every action, every decision, and every interaction holds eternal significance. We begin to see that our lives are not random and that every step we take is part of a larger divine narrative. This understanding compels us to live with a heightened sense of awareness, knowing that we are participating in a much greater story, a story that spans eternity and involves all of creation. As we embrace this truth, we recognize the responsibility we carry as stewards of God's grace. We are not merely recipients of His love, but we are called to be conduits of that love, sharing it freely with others. The more we walk in this understanding, the more we are drawn to serve others, not out of obligation, but out of a deep desire to reflect the heart of God. Serving others becomes a natural response to the love we have received from God. We realize that the very essence of living as a follower of Christ is to love and serve others, just as He did. This service is not limited to grand gestures, but is reflected in the small everyday acts of kindness, compassion, and generosity. It is in the way we listen to others, the way we speak life into those around us, the way we offer a helping hand to those in need, and the way we extend grace to those who have hurt us. As we continue to live in this way, we begin to see the profound impact that even the smallest acts of service can have. We recognize that God uses these simple acts to advance His kingdom and to demonstrate His love to the world. Every moment we choose to serve, we are participating in God's redemptive plan. This understanding leads us to live with a deeper sense of purpose. We realize that our lives are not just about achieving personal goals or accumulating success, but about fulfilling the greater purpose that God has set before us. Every step we take, every decision we make, becomes an opportunity to align ourselves with God's will and to make a difference in the world. This realization brings with it a sense of urgency. We begin to understand that our time here on earth is limited and that every moment counts. We are reminded that we are called to make the most of every opportunity, to use our time, resources, and energy to further God's kingdom, and to share His love with the world. We stop waiting for the perfect circumstances and start living out our calling right where we are. As we walk in this purpose, we begin to experience the joy that comes from knowing we are fulfilling the very reason we were created. This joy is not dependent on external circumstances, but comes from living in alignment with God's will. We discover that true fulfillment is found not in what we achieve for ourselves, but in how we live for others and for God's glory. This shift in perspective also leads us to a deeper understanding of what it means to live with integrity. Integrity is not just about doing what is right when others are watching, but about staying true to our values and convictions, even when no one is looking. It is about being consistent in our actions and words, ensuring that they reflect our commitment to Christ. We begin to see that living with integrity is essential to our witness in the world. It is through our integrity that others see the authenticity of our faith and the reality of God's work in our lives. As we continue to grow in integrity, we also begin to understand the importance of living with humility. Humility is not about thinking less of ourselves, but about thinking of ourselves less. It is about recognizing that we are not the center of the universe and that our lives are part of a much bigger story. Humility allows us to serve others with a heart of compassion and grace, without seeking recognition or praise. We begin to understand that true greatness in God's kingdom is not measured by status or success, but by our willingness to serve others and put their needs before our own. As we walk in this humility, we also come to see the importance of obedience. Obedience is the natural outflow of our love for God. It is about trusting that His commands are for our good, and that following His will leads to true freedom and fulfillment. The more we obey, the more we grow in our understanding of God's heart, and the more we experience the fullness of His blessings. We begin to see that obedience is not a burden, but a joy, and that when we walk in obedience, we are walking in God's perfect plan for our lives. This process of growth and transformation is not always easy. There will be times when we struggle, when we face obstacles, and when we feel like giving up. But in these moments, we are reminded that God is with us and that He is using every challenge to shape us and refine us. We learn that God does not waste our struggles, but uses them to strengthen our faith and deepen our trust in Him. It is through these trials that we grow in perseverance, learning to press on even when the road ahead seems uncertain. As we continue in this journey, we also learn the importance of resting in God's presence. Rest is not just about physical relaxation, but about finding peace and knowing that God is in control. It is about trusting that He will carry the burdens we cannot bear, and that He will provide for our every need. When we rest in God, we are reminded that we do not have to strive or fight for our own success. We can rest in His provision, knowing that He has already secured our future. This rest leads to a deep sense of peace, and as we experience this peace, we are able to serve others with a heart that is refreshed and renewed. We realize that it is in God's presence that we find true rest, and that His peace surpasses all understanding. As we continue to walk with God, we begin to see that His plan for our lives is not just about us, but about how He will use us to impact the world around us. We are called to be a light in the darkness, to reflect God's love to those who have not yet experienced. This realization brings a new sense of urgency and responsibility. We begin to see every encounter, every relationship, and every opportunity as a chance to share the love of Christ with others. Whether through our words, actions, or simply by being present, we realize that we are the hands and feet of Jesus in the world. This awareness drives us to live with greater purpose, knowing that every moment is an opportunity to bring glory to God. As we live with this understanding, we begin to experience a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy. We know that our lives are not in vain, but that we are part of something far greater than ourselves. God is using us to further His kingdom, and in doing so, we find true peace and purpose. This journey is not easy, but it is always worth it, for we are walking in the footsteps of Christ, and He is with us every step of the way.